You were here with By the Cover. Today I'll be reviewing Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. This book was 283 pages and took me 3 days to read. I would rate this book a 3.5 out of 10. This review is going to contain some major spoilers, so if you do not want to hear those, click off now. A synopsis. Anna and Reed move into a prestigious, mysterious Brooklyn apartment building after a traumatic childbirth leaves Anna paralyzed and struggling with resentment. The couple quickly faces supernatural horror. As far as my likes with the book, I thought the cover art was really cool. I thought it had some great scenes. The first encounter with the creepy old lady was very disturbing and was probably my favorite scene in the book. The blow-up with Reed and his boss was entertaining. The blow-up with Reed and Frank was entertaining, and the scene with Busy I thought was very disturbing. I liked how George's character was developing, and I thought there were some humorous moments throughout the book as well. As far as my dislikes of this book, if I had to sum this book up, it would be bad parenting, trauma dumping, overt political leanings, and selfishness. For a horror book, it was not scary. It was disturbing, yes. It was disgusting, yes, but not scary. The pacing of it was very slow. It was a slow burn all the way through the end of the book. Up until around page 70 of this book, I was ready to fall asleep. I was going to possibly DNF this book at that point. I carried on and it did get a little bit more interesting and exciting, but overall a very slow burn, slow pacing. This is a very character-driven story. Unfortunately, there aren't any strong characters in this book. The primary two characters, both Anna and Reed, are very selfish. They're very weak. They have a lot of traits that are just not good to have in people. Like, I would not hang around these people. I didn't like them. The best character in this book was Georgia, and I liked the way that her character was developing, but then they take her out of the book way too early. Both of the main characters are very selfish, and they have terrible traits that I just can't relate to. Neither of the primary characters had any arcs. They didn't learn anything, and there really wasn't a purpose to their characters other than just being characters. The story fell flat emotionally for me because I didn't care what was going to happen to them. I wasn't invested in these characters. Characters being the primary driver of the story made this story not that interesting. The plot also felt like a mishmash of many other books and ideas. It heavily reminded me of Lock Every Door by Riley Sager, and that book explores rich versus poor and being chosen to live in an apartment building above your social class. It also reminded me of Palmetto by Ania Alborn, which deals with pregnancy and bugs and feeling that something's just not right. It also reminded me of The Shining, with the building almost being a character, and one of the main characters being really obsessed with the building and its history. And the creature design reminded me of the TV show The Strain. I didn't like that one of the main points the villains make later in the story was that they only feed on bad people, and yet they killed Georgia, who was not a bad person. She was just trying to help Anna. While I did like the cover art, the actual design on the front of the cover of the creature is not how the creatures are at all. I didn't like that the author purposefully holds back information for dramatic effect. Sometimes that can be done by an author to great effect. This was just such a slow burn that the exciting parts weren't all that exciting, and so it felt like they were overcompensating with trying to make things interesting. The author also did a lot of telling and not showing. They spell things out for you in big long diatribes. If you've ever seen movies where the bad guys get up towards the end and tell the good guys about their master plans for 15 minutes and what they plan to do and why they are who they are and all of that type of stuff, that is what the bad guys in this book do, and it makes them far less intriguing. But the author did a lot of that with everything in this book. The plot also did not make sense. Towards the end of the book, Anna tries to kill Reed because Reed is trying to convince her to leave the baby with the vampires, and she doesn't want to. So she ends up paralyzing her husband. Then after she chats with the vampires for like 5 minutes, she decides she's going to leave the baby with the vampires. So she makes the exact decision that Reed was going to convince her to make. Didn't make a lot of sense. And then after she leaves the baby with the vampires, because she thinks that's the best thing for him, then she decides she's going to destroy the building that the vampires live in. Okay, doesn't make a lot of sense. So I didn't think the plot was logical. I'm just not a big fan of vampire stories in general unless they are super original, and this one borrowed from enough stories that I didn't find it all that original. What you have here is a character-driven story about characters that learn nothing, a non-original creature that wasn't really done super well, and a very slow burn of a book with characters I just didn't care about. There's not a lot redeeming about this book. Like I said, there were a few good scenes in it, and I thought they were really good. I could see the potential, and I did like Georgia's character. I would have liked to have seen more of her in the book, and I did like some of the humor through the book, but the rest of it I didn't enjoy at all. I do plan on reading more of Nat Cassidy's work. I've got both When the Wolf Comes Home and Mary, so we'll see if I like those any better. That's about it. We'll catch you later.